That if you had to write a book about your life, what would the title of that book be?
I don't know if I'd ever write a book, but I think I'd write Life's Destination.
Why is that?
Because I think every person that's born on the face of this earth has a journey. And that journey is the physical life that we go through. And I believe that life we live is a journey. From the very start, when we are born in a crib and live in a crib, our parents feed us, they clothe us, they teach us to be certain things. When we grow to that place, then we go on our own. And every decision we make is a decision we make as individuals. I know I've done a lot of things in my life. Some things are good and I've made some bad choices, but as a whole, I want them to remember that I was a man that loved the Lord, that wanted to serve Him, please Him. I have a heart of love for all humanities. I can say deeply in my heart today that I do not hate any person alive on this earth. Oh yes, I disagree with many people with what they are doing, but I do not like those, but they as an individual, a living soul, a creation of Almighty God, I have to love that, because if I cannot love my enemies, how am I going to love my friends? I think the military today, I admire our military, and it's the only way we can preserve our freedom. The military is a necessary force that we have for our freedom, and also for the very fact as a nation. Our nation really was founded under war, because I've been a historian all my life, and since I was in high school, and I think of all the wars that were fought. I think of the Revolutionary War. I have so many things I've studied about it. And then I think of the War of 1812. I think of the Spanish-American War and all the events that took place. And then I think of the Second War, or not Second War, but the Civil War, where I have been humbled by what I've read about, what I know about it, of how men fought against their brothers. They have fought against their families. Why? Because they all had a motive to survive. But I thank the Lord today that the Union survived, because had not the Union survived that Battle of Gettysburg, I don't know where we would have been today. Not that maybe we would have been any worse off, I don't know. But the direction we were going, with the intent of a lot of people, would not have been, because we are a free nation, men, regardless of the race, color, or creed. We are all free to make those choices. And I think, had it not been critical, but I think the intent of the Revolutionary War with the Confederates was they're hoping to keep man enslaved to the ability that they could not choose for them, that they had to do what they were ordered to do. And then of course we come on after Civil War, World War I, which really in essence, I can't say at that time we were really threatened in our freedom, other than our friends. I'm talking about France and England, those places were very threatened about I think his name was I'm trying to think of the ruler. His name was, I'm going to think.
The German War?
Yeah, German War.
Kaiser Wilhelm?
Kaiser Wilhelm. I'm thinking of him. He started out trying to defeat the freedom that those people had. Nothing to do with the category that we would put Adolf Hitler in, but he was out to destroy what those people had instilled in his own mind, his idea for leadership. And of course, the Second World War, of course, we know is the war of all wars, when our survival was really threatened many times. And had Adolf Hitler got the atomic bomb before we would, only God would know where we would be today, because he certainly would have used it on humanity regardless where you were then. And so I feel I had a small part in that great war. I think along with millions of other young men. And I think we can drive a stake down and say there was a time which we fully, wholeheartedly defended our freedom. Not only the military, but the civilians away, but the way the civil people turned a toe, and we developed a magnificent army and a magnificent fighting force. And of course, then we've been in a lot of other wars. I don't know if Vietnam was a terrible war. I would not argue the pros and cons, but I just don't know why we ever had that war. But that's not my object to decide whether it's right or wrong. To me, I just don't understand why we had to go through that. And 58 names over on that wall there in Washington live as examples of the price that was paid there. And then of course you go on to the Desert Storm and Afghanistan and all these. I just don't know. We're seemingly faced with one of the greatest threats of our time right now, and that is these nations like North Korea that are developing the atomic bomb. And their intent, I believe wholeheartedly, their intent is to develop a carrying mission, a rocket that will deliver that atomic bomb or bombs to wherever they desire. And God forbid that we ever should have that come to pass. We don't know. So I'm very much thankful that we have a nation that has a military and a commitment to protect not only our people in America, but people in other countries that are less fortunate.
What do you want people to remember about World War II?
I think if there's any one thing that I would want to remember the sacrifices that were paid. And when I say sacrifice, I know there were millions of soldiers and sailors and Air Corps and all that paid a sacrifice. But I think the general public, in a sense, paid a sacrifice too, because they were denied a lot of the things that we had, that we don't have. Maybe in the way that we'd like to have. I'm talking about rationing. People actually accepted those things as a point of their ambition to promote freedom, I think. Because I never heard people really complain about, they mentioned about rationing gasoline and other things, but no one has ever said, well, curse and downgrade it to the place where I'm afraid to die if this generation were restricted on what they could have, what they couldn't have, there would be an uprising. I believe that to be true, that people are so detrimental in their ambition to be self-efficient and want their own way so much they'll do anything to promote that or keep that.
Kind of leads into the next question. What do you think about the world today and where it is headed?
I would say this, in my lifetime, which has only been, 90 years, but I only remember probably 85 years of that, I have never seen and known of the world in my lifetime to be in the predicament it's in today. As far as I'm concerned, this is the worst I ever seen, even our own country, because of the hatred, the violence, and everything that's going on. I believe everybody has the right to demonstrate, to plead their cause. They did in old days, but there are people today that are demonstrating for things that are anti-American as far as I'm concerned. When people go out and these colleges are demonstrating against law and authority, and they want to downgrade our government, criticize everything that's happening. I have never dreamed that we would reach this place. And the world is so topsy-turvy with all the starvation and the war and rumors of wars and all the things that are going on. Maybe I wasn't knowledgeable of it, but I don't remember a time when we were suffering as we are today.
Are there any conspiracy theories that you subscribe to? Anything that you think might be a conspiracy theory that
I have to believe there are conspiracies against us and our government right today. Now, for instance, I think the terrorist organizations, they have one objective in mind. That is to unite and get rid of the United States of America and the freedom we have. I believe that may not be aware in a lot of hearts today, but I believe in the long range of their objective, that is what they're going to try to do. And I believe that there are those today that would endorse a form of government that I do not agree with. I think there's groups that would endorse socialism. And we are a democracy, we have freedom. If you get induced socialism into our society, we will no longer have the ability of free choice, because everything will be provided for us. We'll be told what we can do and what we can't do. And I understand socialism, this is basic what their goal is. You look at Russia, what happened into Russia. The millions of lives that were killed whenever they broke into socialism. And all these other countries that ever had socialism, you take very carefully right now, I think North Korea is probably one of the examples of what the end result of socialism can be, because a dictator has come out of it and he has no regard for human life. His own people he tortures, he mistreats them, they are starving to death. And this is prevalent all over our world today, even in the African countries. So I think our freedom definitely is at stake today, and it may be a matter of time when we face the reality we've got to face some very strong consequences.
Do you have any regrets in your life, or things that you would go back and change?
In my own life, well, that's kind of a hard question, because I can't undo what's already been done. I think the one thing that I would change, I would fulfill the promise I made to God on Iwo Jima. I gave my life. It took me 10.5 years before I came to that realization. Those 10.5 years, I could have served him and honored him. That is probably the biggest regret I got in my life. Oh my, I think if I had a chance, I would have tried. I probably would have taken the GI Bill, maybe got a better education. Not that it would have changed or altered my life, I don't know. I would have tried to help my daughters more than I was able to. Not that they didn't go wrong, because they achieved their goal pretty much on their own, because they could not get much help from their mom and dad, because at a time in our life we just didn't have it. And I just feel sorry that I couldn't have done more for them when they were growing up. I don't know, as far as other regrets, I don't regret living in America. I don't regret living in Ohio. I don't regret it having a home, or everything else is pretty much on the positive side. I'm on the backside now. I know what's happened in the past. I've got my regrets, yes. If I could change them, yes, I would do it. But to go back and start all over, I don't know what my life would have been. I don't know if I would have met my wife. I don't know if I'd had children. I am perfectly satisfied with the way life is today for me. I have no regrets in how God has blessed me. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
So you've witnessed and been part of some of the most intriguing history of all time. I guess the tail end of the Civil War veterans kind of crossed your path in your early day. World War I veterans, you obviously went through, grew up in the Depression, World War II veteran, and all the history that fell between then and now. Does that ever cross your mind at all, like what you've lived through, and what are your thoughts? How do you think about that? How do you react to that?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, after I got out of the service, Second World War, I had a mixed up time. But then when I got married and I got a job and I got established, I thought things were rosy in this country. But I was not very long till the North Korean War broke out. Men drafted went into that battle. The war had resumed on a smaller magnitude, but it was war again. When we fought the North Koreans, which literally today that confrontation is still going on, because the South Koreans are happy with the democracy they have, but the North Koreans as leadership are not happy, because the leader, the dictator of that country, he wants power and authority. And when anybody wants power and authority, they're going to cause suffering, great disappointment. Now, what's going to happen? I don't know. But I just feel today we're facing a type of uncertainty. But yes, I think looking back, I have to say I'm disappointed in what happened after the Second World War. Because you look at all those conflicts, and we're no closer we're further away from world peace now than we were then. Really, when you analyze it. We had more security, more peace after the Second War ended than we do now. Even though there's a lot of rebuilding of Japan and Germany and other countries, which helped to get them back on their feet. It looked like we were living in what I would call a heyday as far as the world. The one thing I want you to be aware of is that we have a freedom that no place in the world compares with. And I think you ought to take the opportunity to enjoy that freedom, because you are free choice, you have the right to choose, you have the right to vote, you have all kinds of liberties that many places in the world don't have. And as a young person starting out, the one thing that I would recommend to do is get a very, very good education. Now, I don't know what line of work individual may pursue, but if you want to get into the medical field, then I think you feel called and have the ability to go for that. If you're called to be an engineer, go for engineering. I think every person has a calling in life, and I would say to any person, try to develop that calling you have, know what it is, and proceed with all your heart, mind, and soul to fulfill that commitment. Some may be just a commitment to be a good person, a good citizen, a good family man or a good family mother, and raise a family. I think there's no noble calling than for good, honest Christian parents, that they can live a life and teach their children and others a way of life is better than what we can have if we choose to make it. And for those that are maybe a little older, I would say reminisce over your early childhood. Think back of those blessings that God Almighty has bestowed upon us as a nation. And I feel with all your heart you should pursue His will for your life, whatever that will may be. The one will is to know Him in a personal relationship as your Lord and Savior. And I thank the time that I'm able to leave maybe a little mark on the wall of what I have lived through. I have no regrets in my life. I have only joy and gladness in my heart. And I want every living person that will come across the pages of time to have that same rejoicing, that same sense of independence, and that knowledge of being a free moral agent. My life is just a speck on the pages of time. There are so many more that have lived, that have achieved far above. I remember the Gettysburg Address is one of the things I remember. Abraham Lincoln's dad, he wrote this little note on the way down the train to Gettysburg on I think it was an envelope or something. He started out, he said, 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth a new continent upon this nation. testing whether this nation or that nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. Now we are met on a battlefield that place, testing whether this nation or any man can long endure. But that's just some of the words that I hold high, and because they're words, they're simple, plain words, but they're words that have a depth and meaning. He must have felt some of the sorrow and some of the grief. I know I've been there in Gettysburg, like I told you, that was an experience that was an indelible impression on my mind. I remember that last one, the last battles was called Pickett's Charge. He charged against the Union forces, and literally his whole division was killed. They were literally slaughtered. Because it was bad judgment? I don't know. Because it was a desire for victory? I don't know. I know that the suffering was horrendous far before we could even estimate any degree. I don't know of any suffering in our history. Yes, there was an awful lot of suffering, World War II, but when you stop and think of all the casualties and it was American people. All the way it wasn't people of the world. It was American people that suffered the tragedy, the heartbreak, the sorrow that was done during that war.